I only play the golf game generally during the TGA tour, and it lasts about 3 or 4 months. When that's done, I put the game away and I don't really play it again until the next season. So,
see, I think that's healthy. I think that's the ability to put it down a bit is a good thing. Keeps it fresh, maybe. Keeps it
After you're done, we play 6 tournaments. After you're done with those 24 rounds in about a 3-month period, you're ready. In my mind, I'm done. That's enough. I don't need to play it anymore for a while. There's too many other games in your life that need playing.
Exactly.
So.
Exactly. Well, why don't we just go ahead and do a formal introduction now? It always is great just to kind of speak with APBA folks, any gamers, but APBA in particular, you just start going right into it. Mr. Ron Emch, very robust YouTube channel. I mean, if you want to learn the game of APBA Golf, I think that's where you're going to go first. One of the first places you're going to go. We got a little, in your honor, a little Arnold Palmer hat that Dr. Tom Klein sent us when we did our interview with him. A little card action to go with that.
That's cool.
From the 32A62 set. Now, how long have you been playing the APBA Golf game, sir?
All right. Well, I thought about that, and I'd have to go back to when I was 15 or 16. So you're talking probably around 1960, the late 1960s. All right. And I have a brother that's 1 year younger than I am. And my parents, went out or bought the APBA Golf game. So that's when I first started playing it. And we're both sports fans, and we both like golf. So we'd pick a couple golfers and go against each other. And we played the original golf game quite a bit. All right. So, late 60s is when I first got into APBA Golf with the original game.
Excellent. So players like Gary Player, of course, and Jack Nicklaus, et cetera, the great names. What was the learning curve for you then? And are you an avid golfer outside of the board game?
The original APBA Golf game was fairly easy to learn. There wasn't any master rules as there are in the current version. And it was pretty much, hit the ball, or you roll the dice, put the result of the ball, bring it back to the center line, calculate your distance to the hole, because you couldn't aim left or right or anything like that. It was just calculate distance, find the right club for the golfer, roll the dice and get it. So it was a fairly simple game, but you got realistic results. That was the beauty of it, right? The better golfers usually golf better than the golfers that weren't so good. As far as my own, I started golfing close to the end of my being in college. Up until then, I didn't really have the time or money to go golfing on my own. But once I graduated, I had 2 brothers and a dad that we used to golf. That was our foursome for quite a while, along with us other friends. And I golfed then I'd say from 72 to 73. But I gave it up about 5-6 years ago. I'm not a very good golfer in real life, and I wasn't going to get better. And there's another game that kind of came into my life called pickleball. And, I play that, anywhere from 10 to 14, 15 hours a week now. So, and it's so much fun. Exercise is great. I do not miss the real golf at all. So, but like I said, up until about 5 or 6 years ago, I was in leagues and stuff like that, but never very good.
So in terms of who are your golf gods and or the courses? I've got we got a near and dear to my heart, Westchester Golf Course. I used to work up in Harrison, New York, and a couple New Jersey courses here from the old games. Just curious, what are some of your, who are your top cards and players in real life and courses that you favor?
Well, I know this is going to sound, not very original, but obviously Jack Nicklaus. On the TGA tour a couple years ago, I was able to draft him, and I basically ran the tournament. I ended up being in first place with him. His card was so good. So obviously he's up there. Greg Norman, Harry Varden. I've enjoyed, any of the guys I've picked to play in the TGA tour, I've really enjoyed the different types of golfers. This year I played Justin Thomas. He was a little disappointing. I even picked my second golfer. I have my sister lives, she's deceased now, but she lives in Minneapolis, and her son is really one of his best friends is Tim Herron from the PGA Tour. And so I picked his card from, like, I don't know, 2017 or 18 or whatever, just to have fun with him. So, it just was fun playing with somebody you felt like, I've never met Tim personally, but I feel like I've met him through my nephew, because he talks about him a lot and just says he's a wonderful guy. So, mostly the same ones that most people probably would like, the Nicklases, the Woods, anybody that's good, I admire, especially those that get there and can stay on top for a while. It's pretty awesome.
For sure, for sure. There's a discipline to the game for sure. I think some folks who might, not, it's like any game, I guess. There are mechanics and there's strategy and all tactics.
Yeah, mental toughness, everything. It's pretty awesome.
Awesome. Excellent. So compare for us kind of the old game and the current version. How would you suggest approaching either and or starting with one or the other?
Well, the original is not really available anymore unless you go to the eBay route or something like that, right? In fact, before I got back, I said my brother and I, we had the original APBA game. Somewhere along life, we lost it. And man, I said, I have to get that again. I can't be without it. So I ended up buying another one of them off of eBay, and I got it. I don't think I ever played it, Jeff. I think it's still sitting under the bed in the spare bedroom right now. I hadn't been playing. And then I'd say around 2007, 8, I came across a competitor's game, George's game, George Gurney's ASG.
Of course, ASG. Yeah.
And I went, because for a while, APBA stopped making golf, right? So I found ASG Golf, and it was terrific. The game itself is a very, very good game. And so I kind of went hook, line, and sinker with ASG Golf in the late 2000s, let's say. Played that on and off for a few years. And then I saw this thing on Facebook called the TGA Tour, which was a group of guys who during the winter months play a tournament, a 4-round tournament, like once every 3 weeks. And I said, man, I got to do that. That sounds wonderful. But they used APBA Golf. So I went hook, line, and sinker with that and bought everything I could because I had to have the courses in order to play. And that, of course, they were using the newer version, which included Dr. Klein's master rules that he first published back, I think, in 2003. And then I think APBA added them to their game basically in 2010. And the version I think I got a 2013, the latest results booklet for the golf is what I have. And I was forced to learn the master rules right off the get-go with that game. I didn't feel that intimidated because I knew what the original APBA game was like, right? It just took time and slowly weave them in. After a few rounds, they become second nature. I don't think maybe some people might disagree with me, but the newer version of APBA Golf is really more a simulation of golf, real life golf, than I think the original APBA game is. And maybe heard me talking that, in the original game, you basically get a result. Let's say you hit a 270, right 15. You bring the ball back to the center line and move it back. So, and the original game, I think if you moved it back to 15 yards to the center line, you also moved it 15 yards back on the center line. And then, your shots, you just take your shot. You can't aim or anything. So it was just like pick your club, roll the dice, see what happens. With the newer game, they, with all the master rules, they have aiming involved, so you can aim certain situations, you can aim your shot, so you can point it toward the pin if you want to. You can work the ball. There's a much more robust set of rules around short chip shots to the green. Wind is involved, course conditions, hard, soft, wet. The wind is involved. So when you add all those, you get a set of conditions and and a good test. And it feels like, in my mind, you're really playing real golf. I mean, so when you play the game, you kind of can picture yourself being out on a real golf course and having to kind of make the same decisions, because you have all these factors that can be to your advantage or disadvantage that come into play. So I can tell you right now, I don't have a high desire to go back and play the original game. Probably someday I'll get rid of it, but it's a little bit of collector in me that says I can't, I don't want to get rid of it yet. But the new game is a much closer simulation to real golf than the old game. So I kind of favor that. So
are you trying, when you play, and are you trying to recreate, a given outcome? Or are you trying to maybe get a guy who was underdog over that hump and kind of remake history a little bit? And about how long does an 18 hole game take to play for you these days?
Well, first of all, it takes me about an hour nowadays. If I'm not doing any kind of filming, because once in a while I will film holes for my YouTube channel, but if I'm just playing straight through, I can play a round in about an hour. So I mean, that's how quick you can get with it. If you have things like wind or involved a blustery wind where you're going to get wind on more holes than normal, that might add a little bit extra, because you got to remember to take the wind into account, and all your calculations just take a little extra time. When you play the TGA Tour, you're usually trying to draft the best golfers there are, right? You're not going out there to get a guy that might be in the middle of the pack on the tour. I don't think there's enough real simulation in the game to think that I can have an impact on making that guy turn or climb the mountain and get over it. We have to remember this is APBA, and many times you're at the mercy of the dice gods playing this game, right? So I guess the answer to your question is not that often for trying to get somebody better, because it's just as much as you'd like to think you could have an effect on it, the dice factor probably more than what that I'm going to do on it.
So if you would perhaps maybe help me and some other folks who might not know what the WIP, and that's the old pre new cards, I imagine there's an extra column at least, I think.
Right.
Just wondering. Sorry.
It's an approach, the A column, right? So it's for approach shots. So any shot 100 yards or less to the green, you use that column to get results. Okay, you take the PRN number, or the result number from the card, in that column for shots 100 yards and closer, and then apply it to the result booklet. And there in the booklet nowadays, they have ranges. I think it's from 75 to 100, 20 or 50 to 70, and then 25 to 45. So there's like 3 different columns or chart results for your approach shots. All right. And then if you're 20 yards or less, there's even a result chart for that. But the numbers that you get, or the result you get off that chart, is how many feet you're from the hole. So they're just assuming that you're 20 yards or closer. We're not going to make you roll to see how far you're from the hole. The result off that chart tells you you're 8 foot from the hole, or 4 feet from the hole directly. Where the other charts, the approach charts, you get on a grid, and then you got to calculate your putt distance, right? Just like any other time. So, and I think Dr. Klein or whoever, when they added that, I think his thought was, you have guys who are really good with longer irons, but they may not have the touch game, right? Or you have guys that are really good at chip, the pitching wedge and in and stuff like that, but maybe a little more. So it allows them to be a little more granular with that player's real skill level, right? At least when it comes to the irons and your short game. So I think I know it's improved the game, because it has to, right? You have more flexibility to design the card that reflects the skill of the real golfer. So.
And help me, if you would, kind of divine, like obviously we all love ones. We made like 3s, 4s, and 5s. There's some 14s, 13s, and a couple 31s and 32s in here. What are kind of the for those of us again who are unfamiliar, the pitfalls and the great moments when you get those certain numbers?
Yeah. A funny thing about APBA Golf is doubles are probably not your best friend, because when you get doubles, that means you've usually hit a very flush shot, which means you really caught it. So it's probably going to go farther than you wanted it to. Okay. It may go straighter, it may go straight, but it's probably going to be an extra 5, 10, 15 yards, depending on what club you use. So your sweet numbers are those average W and average I numbers. Those, the more of them that are on a card, you're going to shoot better with that golfer. If I'm 175 yards out, I look and I determine which club to use, and you use the average I column, right, to see. So, okay, his average is a 3. This is perfect. If I get a 3, I hit 175 yards, what I want to do. But if you roll a 66 or 11, let's say, you get a 1 instead of a 3, you probably hit it 10 yards too far. Okay, so not that those numbers are bad, but you want numbers that are within 1, above or below or on of that average W. Those are your sweet numbers. Okay, and the more they have of those, the better the golfer will do. The result numbers 10 and above, then you start getting into trouble. So it makes it very easy to look on a golfer's card. You actually look for numbers that are 2 digits long, right? From 10 to, I think it's 36 or whatever. Okay. You can't, if there's a lot of those on the card, that means he's going to be spraying the ball left and right quite a bit. There are exceptions. 12 and 24 in your iron and approach shots, those usually leave you with a fantastic result, like a hole plus dice roll or a hole plus die roll. So 12 and 24 results in the card, and those usually come, not usually, the only time I've ever seen them is on 26 and 46. So you can and maybe 66, but so that's a double digit number, but it's a great result, right? So you look at those. 31, 32, 33, those numbers, like 31 is your monster drive. So, I mean, it's going to end up like 350, 360 for some of these guys. So that, again, can be good or bad, right? I mean, if there is some rough that you can reach at 320 or there's water, you got to be careful. You know that, oh, I'm going to hit a driver. I only hit an average of, let's say, 290, right? With the roll and everything. And boom, you get a 31, you hit it too far. But, and it's funny, in the past, I'm going to say 4 or 5 years, with the longer distances being hit by the golfers nowadays, there's a lot more 31, 32s, 33s showing up on cards to try to accommodate that change in distance and so forth. So single digits are good. Single digit result numbers are good. Double digit numbers generally are not good, except for a few exceptions. Like I said, on irons and chips, results of 12 and 24 and 36 usually leave you with a very good result on the green. And for drivers, 31, 32 usually is a monster drive. Most of the time it works out, but all the other numbers, not so good. And you can see it on every club result in the books. 1 through, if you get a result of 1 through 9, you're probably going to be somewhat in the fairway. Okay, for the most part. You hit that 10 number and start going up, watch out. All bets are off.
We talk a lot in the football world about kind of normalizing, and probably in the baseball world too, where you're trying to, let's say you want to do like a scrimmage between the 58 Colts and the 98 Colts, kind of a charity game, whatever the scenario, what if would be there. But as you mentioned with those 31s and 32s, have you tried to meld like some of the classic golfers with some of the new power hitters? And is it difficult, or is it really not a fruitful exercise?
Well, no, I mean, it's easy to do, right? I mean, it's right there. here again, the biggest thing you're going to see with the newer golfers is their average W and I numbers are going to be like 2, 3, and 4, which means on an average, they're going to hit another 10 to 20 yards on an average, right? Whereas some of the older golfers, you get like 5, 6, or 7 as an average, and they are accurate, just as accurate as the other guy, but they're not gonna on an average hit it as far. And it usually matters. I mean, I guess it does matter. It definitely matters off the tee, right? You get another 20, 30 yards off a drive, that means you're that much closer for the second shot, right? And I think it was one of my fellow TGAers, he was having a great, I think with Rory, I thought Rory had a lot of numbers that would spray, but he also had like an average of 1 and 2 or something like that, like about as good as you can get. And he said, like when Rory is like 180 yards out, he can hit a 7-iron. While the other guys are pulling out a 5 or a 4-iron, and in the result booklets, a 7-iron, generally, if you get a good number, you're going to be much closer to the hole than a result number from with a 4 or 5-iron. Even if you hit your average, it might be another 5 yards away or whatever. But that doesn't mean the other guys can't win, especially if they're accurate, right? So it is fun to try those. I don't have a problem with that. I mean, to compete on the TGA Tour, I think it's moving to where it seems like you have to have a guy that can pound the ball. We still have, the Vardens, the Sam Snead, Bobby Jones. I think Bobby Jones actually ended up being the individual champion this year in the TGA Tour. So, a good card is a good card. And that was the thing when I had Nicholas. He had so many, on his iron shots, he had so many average iron numbers. I think at least a third of the possible results were average numbers. Every time I was hitting, I was within 5 yards or on the pin, 30 to 40% of the time. The guy was a birdie machine. It was amazing. And so, and you can get that with anyone. So it's just that, I mean, I would rather use a 7-iron from 180 than a 5-iron from 180, right? Just so. But you can still do it. They are kind of normalized for the most part, but yeah. So I think it's a little tougher maybe with those guys that are shorter hitters, but generally the longer hitters, they also spray a lot more. So that kind of, they can kind of offset stuff with that. So
now, no, with all apologies to Tom Nelshoppen and his APBA blog, he has the Monster Card Monday and Terrible Card Tuesday features. And in the football world, we certainly talk about players who are overcarded or undercarded. In your experience, wealth of experience with APBA Golf, who have been some of the real power cards, like the ones that frightening and the ones that are kind of like, ooh?
Gosh, Jeff, I'm not sure I can answer that with enough knowledge. Like names like I just threw out, like Rory, all the young bucks. I guess I'd have to go look and see the guys that have average W&Is of like 1 or 2. Those are going to be your monster guys. And I don't know what Archambault's numbers were last year, with the new card, what he'll be, but I got to believe like on a driver, he's going to have an average of 1, I bet, or something like that. But he's probably going to have a lot of double digits also. So, I mean, he has a potential to hit a long shot, but and then as far as, cards that aren't that good, there's a lot of them. After you get down probably the top 10 golfers, at least in my mind, of each year, you start getting a lot more double-digit results on other numbers. On the APBA card, it's 12, 12, 32, 52, 14, 34, 54, and then what would it be? 36 or no, 16, 26, and 36. Those 9 numbers, every card, that's where the spray numbers are. So the fewer you have, you know that you can kind of make a judgment on how accurate that golfer is. And some, a lot of guys have all nine of those slots filled with double-digit numbers. And then you go down into the rest of the card and they still have more. and a lot of your big hitters have that. So, and you look at a card like that and it scares me because, 20, 30, 40, 50 yards off center line usually leaves you in tree or out of bounds or something like that. But there are a lot of cards that you probably won't touch unless you're forced to, so it's kind of like a bad hitter in APBA baseball or something like that. But it's still all fun. And I think a fun thing would be to, some of the guys on the TGA tour would like to just draft players from a single year. And we did that one year, I think, rather than right now we can draft, any year, from the all-time great set, because it allows everybody to get a fairly decent golfer, right? As far as using a year set, I would be open to that. And I've told them this, that I'd be open to that, but let's take like the 10 top golfers out of the mix so that you get down into your, golfers that weren't winners all the time in order to make a more even field, right? Because if you do 1 year, there's always going to be 1 or 2 or 3 golfers that are probably going to be, have a huge chance of winning. And I don't know if that's fair to the other 25 guys playing. So that's for what that's worth.
Yeah, no, for sure. Ray Dunlop in the football world talks about, creating his Suncoast Football League to avoid having just all-stars. You got to have the folks across the field. I mean, that's why you get the whole stack of, you want to recreate, the reality of the situation, the context of a great players, field of peers there. Just curious, we talked about ASG, and to establish the ASG fields are, yes, compatible with APBA. That question gets asked every once in a while. So hopefully anyone points here that yes, ASG, and that was kind of the intent. Do you use do you favor any of the ASG courses in particular? And have you ever used any homebrew cards, player cards from other folks?
Yeah. First of all, I think the ASG courses are a work of art. I think George, to fit a hole on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper with the course notes and everything you need to know about that hole, and not have the grids so small that I can't see them, is just a master stroke of genius. And he's really the one that, instead of drawing all 550 yards grids for the hole, he would start them like 150, 175 yards down the fairway, because we never use that part of the fairway, right? The rest of the hole fits, you can have bigger grids on it, right? So that eyes like, older eyes like mine, can look at or see the grids better. Courses, I mean, all of them are good. Everybody has their favorites, like Augusta, the ones over, all the England courses. I love Muirfield Village, though, the ASG Muirfield Village course. I've never been on that course, so it was fun to get it and take a look at it. There's a couple holes there that I have no idea where you would hit a tee shot, because it looks like the tree is right in the middle of the fairway. But obviously people do. And I don't know, have you ever read a book or heard a book called The Match? 2 pros took on 2 amateurs. And one of the amateurs was the caddy in The Greatest Game Ever Played. I want to say, I don't know, you ever seen that movie, The Greatest Game Ever Played? About
No.
Francis Clement. He is like the youngest person to ever to win youngest amateur ever to win the US Open. Played against Harry Varden, but he ended up having a caddy that was like 10 or 11 years old. Well, that caddy ended up growing up and moving to California, and became a good golfer. So it's about him and I want to say Kerry Middlecoff or somebody, but some rich people got together at a dinner, and they said, let's have an 18-hole match, because at the time of the book, the pro golf tour is just coming into its own, but it was still considered a bunch of guys who drank a lot, ran hard, and stuff like that. It hadn't established that credibility. So the book is just very good. And so the course was, I think, Cypress Point, if I'm not mistaken. And that is just a beautiful golf course from ASG. And Dr. Klein what he did was he recreated that golf match. But every hole he wrote up like this newspaper reporter, sports reporter reporting on and through little anecdotes, personal anecdotes about each of the golfers. One of the greatest things I've ever read. I have a copy of it because I don't think it's on the Delphi forums anymore, but and that is a beautiful golf course. And the same thing there. There are so many holes that you're saying, where am I going to hit this ball? But if you read his story, you can kind of get, this is where you got to place the ball. So, but I guess at the end of the day, I don't have what I'd say courses that I'm just in love with. I love all courses. Let's put it that way. I love all courses. So
what are some of the more challenging ones? Like if you want to learn the game, you may want to avoid this one or two holes or courses because, it might be a little.
I think it's Whistling Straits. Or Bethpage-Black. The fairways are narrow, and the hitting the fairway from the driver, it's a long drive to get to the fairway, and the fairways are normal. It's a killer. In APBA Golf, the 90% of the time, the best you can do on a drive is either 15 left or 15 right. You don't get zeros, or you can get a 10 left or right if you hit your average number. So if my average W is a 3 and I roll a 3, I can take 15 or 5 yards off the left right result. But there's so a lot of times there may be only 10 yards of fairway on one side, maybe 15 on the other. So you kind of got to decide what am I feeling lucky? Am I going to hit it to the right or left and aim that way to compensate for it? Bethpage-Black, I'm pretty sure that's a tough one. And then there's another course, and I can't think of it, that has terrific wind conditions, and just it's like, I think on the East Coast, and I'm sorry I can't remember it right now, but I don't like playing that course. There's too many course notes going on, and the wind is just brutal with your results. So yeah, there's some real beauties out there. That one of the things that has happened with APBA, if you remember, the original courses were a spiral bound, like a plastic coat. Now they're coming out in single sheets, right? But along with that change, whoever's designing the later courses have added a lot more course notes to it. Like when you hit the putting green, use 2 columns left in the putting chart, to simulate difficulty. I'm all for course notes. Personally, I think sometimes they've gone overboard with them. It reads like a small novel at the bottom, and trying to remember all them. And, just to me now, you're taken away from just enjoying a nice game of golf. Now you're making it a game with, that have too many rules, trying and taking away some of the enjoyment. The game is hard. The game is hard enough as it is, just to make it harder for the sake of making it harder. I don't need that. So for what that's worth, that's just my opinion only.
So what are some of your tips? A 2-part question, or different questions, but I just want to get them out there. Some of your personal tips that you've come across, your method of play, and I'm sure you've talked a lot about it in your videos. And then can you recall like 1 or 2 of your best rounds?
Yeah. For like driving, I usually aim down the middle of the course, because if you look at the numbers on the under the W column on a golfer, it may say that he tends to go, 50% or 45% to the left and 55% to the right. But if you look at the result numbers, out of the 36 numbers, 17 may go one way and 19 may go the other way. To me, that's not much of a pattern. It's like a 50% chance that it could go either way. So, unless, so most of the time I aim down the middle of the fairway. unless there's a huge amount of fairway on one side. Let's say the fairway extends 20, 25 yards to the left of the center line, maybe only 10 to the right. Then I will aim, I'll figure out where about the middle of the fairway is and maybe aim 10 yards left to give me the maximum chance of landing in the fairway, right? When we have wind conditions, unless you know what the wind is, because a lot of the results on the wind charts are it's a tailwind or it's a crosswind or a swirling wind. So basically you plan and hit your shot, and then you roll the dice to figure out what the wind is. So in that, my tip is don't worry about that result too much, because you don't have a lot of control over it. You may take a chance on a crosswind and maybe aim 5 yards against the crosswind, just as increasing your chances maybe a little bit, but it's very possible. Even though it says there's a crosswind, there are results on that wind chart that says no effect, right? It didn't affect your shot. And then I guess the only other thing, there's some greens that are really, you want to go for the pin, but the chances of staying on the green, because the pin is so close to the edge of the green, +5 or -5 or left, right 5, so you move over, and just like in real golf, you'd play for a safer shot to the green. You may have a longer shot, longer putt, but at least you're on the green. And if you're on the green, you have a chance to sink the putt, right? So, but I don't get too hung up, or I don't overthink it. It's, it is a game. I've played it enough to know that there's some things you can control and take care of, and there's other things that are out of control. So, you take the shot that you think gives you the best odds of making a good shot, right? So there was a second part to that.
Yeah, in terms of like one of your two most memorable games, rounds.
Well, I'm going to go back to the year I played Jack Nicklaus a couple years ago. I think it was might have been the last round. We were playing like the Empire course, which I forget what the real name is right offhand, but it was one of two original courses, or maybe Los Angeles. And I have a good buddy, Jeff Boating, that once in a while we'll hook up on Facebook or FaceTime, and we'll roll 9 holes together. So we had decided to get together and roll some holes together. And I'm glad we did, because on the back 9 of this course, Nicklaus birdied every hole. And I think he ended up shooting like a 61 or something. I mean, I ended up like 35 under for the tournament, Jeff, and I was almost embarrassed. If Jeff wouldn't have been online with me to witness this, I know that when I turned that score in, people would have just said, no way, no way. So that is definitely, not only that round, the whole year. After this, I've played on it 6 years now, or 5 years, and I've always been middle, bottom. I mean, just because maybe my golfers and maybe my ability of playing the game. But Jack Nicklaus, I thought I approached the game the same way as I did any other year, but his card was just unbelievable, or maybe a combination of my dice rolls and his card, but I couldn't do anything wrong. I couldn't do anything wrong. So, but that back 9 by far surpasses anything I've ever even come close to, but 9 birdies in a row. And if Jeff wasn't online with me, I don't know what I did. I might have just said, no, I didn't get 9. And I might have turned in a score of like, 4 under for the back 9 instead of 9 under. I still would have walked away with the tournament. I was so far ahead. So, yeah.
Man, yeah, that is a Titanic moment for sure. So what is on your golf wish list? Any season sets, courses?
Yeah, not really, Jeff. Maybe there should be, but I play all the APBA games and I like playing them all. I just got done with my my role in this year's APBA hockey tournament. There's 12 guys that signed up for it, and so we each had to play 5 games round robin. And I just finished the 5th one last night, and I have a 1-3-1 record. So I'm not going to move on. So that part is gone, but I enjoy playing that. I signed up for the soccer tournament. I just played my first game the other night in that. So I play the game and then I move on to the next one. So it's funny, although I love sports and I've watched sports all my life and a lot of different ones, I don't think I have the depth and knowledge about individuals or seasons or stuff. That's not something that I've retained over the years. And I get around some of the APBA guys at these regional tournaments, or I've been to the national convention a couple of times, and their knowledge of players in the history just blows my mind. I mean, I could sit there with three of them I can't recall at the convention a couple of years ago, and I sat down with them, and in 10 minutes I got up and left, and I said, I can't contribute to this. These guys are talking way more history and knowledge than I know of the game. So I guess I call myself kind of wide, but not very, very deep in a lot of things, unless it's the Tigers and the Lions and stuff like that, your favorite teams. I play a lot of non-sports board games. Like in my basement, I probably have somewhere around 350 board games. And so I can pick up a game of Terraforming Mars or Settlers of Catan or a game like that just as easy as I could sit down and play an APBA game or an ASG game or anything like that. And I mentioned that I played APBA soccer, but if you go down and I organize all my sports games, baseball, basketball, football, golf, hockey, horse racing, car racing, I probably have more different versions of soccer game than any game in my collection. And it's probably the game I would play the least of, so it's kind of funny, but I like buying new games, if nothing else, just to learn about them and see what their engine is all about, right? I mean, it's like reading a book. So
there's a great site. I don't know if you're as much into the war game side of things. I mean, that's kind of where I started. There's a page on Facebook called Pay It Forward War Games. You got a bunch of games in your collection. You offer one up. People call dibs. You randomize, use a randomizer. And whoever wins it, you send it to them, free shipping in the United States. And that person who receives a game has to offer up a game from his collection.
I do have some old war games, that probably wouldn't mind finding a good home or getting rid of them and having them go to a good home or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, board gaming and, Bob Tassinari, when he bought the APBA Journal about 10 years ago-ish, spoke with him. He actually came down to the house and he was telling us about Ticket to Ride. I don't know if you played that one. That's one of the major Euro games. Like, oh my God, it's awesome. And that's where it's part of that really broad. There's like gardening games, and I found newspaper games and all kinds of stuff. It's
No, Ticket to Ride is a great collection of games, and because the original one was over the United States of America, but since then they probably have 20 different versions of different countries and cities with little tweaks to the game to add something to it. But it is a terrific franchise, I guess you'd call, or whatever. But Ticket to Ride, I have 3 or 4 of them, and it's one game I can get the family to play almost any time that they have time to play games. It'd be an easy one to play.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, a lot of great modules. Germany, I think India. It's just like wow, all over the map.
Exactly. Yep.
Cool. Any last thoughts, Ron, on kind of the role of gaming in your life, the life of your family, life of your friends? I mean, you mentioned Jeff and the Nicholas monster round there.
First of all, I don't get to play nearly as many games as I'd like to. My wife is not a big gamer. If I can convince her to sit down and play a game, usually she'll end up liking it, but it's not something that she needs to do, right? So the time has to be right. I have 2 children, they're grown up. They love to play games, but they have kids now. You're in that part of your life where they don't exactly have a lot of time to do things. Fortunately, I do have access to a gaming club here where I live. And if I wanted to, every Tuesday night, I could go game with, got buddies that I've made over the last 15 years. So I do have an outlet for gaming that I can take advantage of, but like I said, I have 2 kids, they have grandkids, 4 nights a week, we're going to athletic contests, right? So part of the reason I don't play as many, again, is my life is still busy with other things.
I'm going to put a link to your YouTube channel. Again, it's a tremendous wealth of material there. Do you have any videos that you can kind of preview folks on here that you might have coming? And do you take requests?
Well, I've never, nobody's ever asked me that. So I guess I'd entertain that kind of stuff. I mean, what the golf ones came about is just not, I felt people would enjoy. First of all, I do them because I enjoy it. Second of all, I've learned that a lot of people enjoy watching them. If nothing else, they like what they see, but they also learn from it, is what you had mentioned earlier. But I do it too because I want to learn from it. I want feedback from people. Ron, you played this wrong, or why did you do this? I can sit there and talk with you all day about gaming and rules and stuff. And I admit I can get on a high horse sometimes that this is the way it is. This is the rule. But man, come find out, no, it's not the right one. And so, that's kind of why I started those things, is as much for other people, but just as much for myself, because I love to hear feedback. And I said this in another interview, I think, that when you're holding your iPhone, and I film with just my iPhone, when you're filming and then you're trying to play the game, you're inherently going to make mistakes. You're going to forget something. It's mostly I forget about the wind, or things like that. And sometimes I forget even where the ball should be. I mean, I'm off 5-10 yards, but anyway, that's part of it. So there's a couple on there that I really like, is the ones about the basic game, where I kind of do a tutorial.
Okay.
Show a whole game being played, of the basic game without advanced fielding, and I think the basic game with advanced fielding.
Okay.
The only APBA baseball I had was a 1968 version. Again, right around the time we got the hockey game, my parents bought us this. We want the 68, would be the 69 version, because they had the 68 season. I was a Detroit fan and my brother was a Cleveland fan. I mean, so I've held on. That's the only season I had until about 7 or 8 years ago. Okay. And I was on Delphi forums, and I've read a post from a guy in Minneapolis. He was going to have one of these regional tournaments, and I hadn't played APBA for a long time. And my sister lived in Minneapolis, and we hadn't been, she'd been home several times, but I hadn't been there, I bet, for like 25 or 30 years.
Wow.
So I asked my wife, I said, hey, there's this tournament going on. We can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. I can go play, and we can go see my sister. She said, okay, which kind of surprised me. So I went and played in that tournament, and, had a blast, and it came back and it kind of rejuvenated my interest in APBA baseball. I immediately embarked on a full season replay of the 68 Tigers, and I got about halfway through, and like a lot of my projects, it kind of bit the dust, but at that time, other regional tournaments were picking up. There's one in Michigan, Jackson, Michigan, Pastor Rich Zawatsky. The Schultz brothers out of the Pittsburgh area put on a fantastic tournament. Chicago guys, Doug Schuyler and Rob Spatz. Those are all easily driving from Toledo. I'm pretty happy living where I'm at, because I can go east, west, north, and south within 3 or 4 hours and be in an APBA baseball tournament. And then after a couple of those, I said, I can do my own. So at the end of August, I'll have my 6th one. I've been putting on an APBA tournament for like 7 years. Obviously, we didn't have it last year because of COVID, right? So I'll be putting on either the 5th or 6th one. I don't know, but those 2 videos, the reason those 2 videos are there is I came back from Minneapolis. I was pumped up, and I just said, I think APBA is going to be picked. I feel if I can get excited about it, other people can too. And there was a lot of videos on YouTube, but a lot of times all they would show is the card, the guy holding the card and a dice roll, and they say, oh, there's this, I'm thinking people don't know how to play the game by watching this video. So my idea was to play a whole game, show them where the results come from, explain some of that stuff. So I'm pretty proud of those. I don't know how many views I've had on them, but and then I've got lots of videos from other regional tournaments. I like a couple, 3 times during the day, I'll just pull my phone out and walk around and film portions of the regional tournaments. And it's nothing but a big den of cackling men, right? You know, the verbiage talking and the rolling of dice. I think I looked before I came in, I think I have 368 videos, but how many of those are and you know, I don't really try to market it or anything like that. I'm not out there to monetize or anything like that. It's just fun. I like tech. I'm a technical guy. I love computers. I love, you know, technology. So it's just, you know, part of it's just learning how to do that stuff. I will love games all my life. I want to play more than I am playing now. Yeah, I guess that's it.